What's going on, everybody? The Third DB here. Today I'm going to be remaking a $450 Fear of God flannel for less than $10. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the base shirt I'm going to be using here is actually a size large Hollister flannel. It looks pretty similar in my opinion to the Fear of God one. I'll show the picture now. So that's what the pattern looks like on the Fear of God one, and I thought this Hollister one fitted pretty well. I also cut the original brand tag out the back just because when I make a custom, that's how I like to do things, so that there's nothing left of the original brand. And here's the price tag, $6, that's our starting price. I'm going to keep a little counter up in the corner just so we know exactly how much everything is. Luckily enough, I live next to one of the largest thrift stores on the East Coast, so I can get some good deals like this pretty often. I did get started a little bit on this before I started filming. I was making the shirt and then I decided to film it anyway. So I already started on the left side a little bit, but let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is start by cutting off the pocket. Well, the flap of the pocket anyway. On the original, there is no flaps over the pockets, but this is something I do on my own personal shirts regardless because I don't like the flaps. It also has the Hollister bird on it, so like I said, we need to get rid of that branding anyway. I'm going to start with the button because that's the easiest thing to take off first. To cut this, you're going to need either a pair of scissors, a seam ripper, or an X-Acto knife, something like that. You just got to be careful if you're going to go that route. I chose to use a seam ripper because I already have one. This part's just simple enough. Just cut the threads out of the back and it comes off easy enough. The flap, however, is where things get a little bit more tricky. Now, the normal stitching is easy enough. You just cut that as you would any other stitching and pull it out, and it's fine. But this bulky part here, where it's stitched over multiple times, is quite tedious to get off. It's definitely not difficult, it's just very tedious. This whole process probably took me about 25 minutes just to get one flap off. Here we finally are after 25 minutes, it's all done, the flap is off. Now you will still see the outline of where the sewing machine had gone through and the stitching was. The outline will still be there where the needle poked through. If you just kind of like grab it and scrunch it around and then run it through the washer, usually that goes away. Next up is going to be the sleeve. So the sleeve is kind of cut off in the fashion of like a 1/4 length sleeve almost. I'll show a picture now just to show you exactly how short it is. The way I figured it out for the left side was I just cut it off on the pattern. There's a little green line. I just followed that and cut it off and then adjusted it as needed until it was what I felt was short enough. And then originally I had them pinned together because I was going to trace it onto the right side, but it turns out that the patterns were exactly the same on both sleeves. So I just followed the exact same line that I cut on the left side of it. The best way to get a straight cut on a sleeve is definitely to cut it one layer at a time. So at the pleat, just make a little nip so you can get in there and cut one layer at a time. If you try and cut both at the same time, the cut's never going to come out even. So you'll want to do it one layer at a time and go in with the scissors as I'm showing here. But here it is, the cut's complete. At the bottom where the seam was, I just decided to readjust a little bit and just make sure it was completely flat and I wasn't cutting it on an angle so that it would look a little funny. But yeah, here's what the sleeve looks like after it's completely cut. They're perfectly even, which is great. It turned out awesome. The last major modification we need to make to the flannel itself is splitting the sides here so that we can add in the zippers. This is what the zipper looks like on the original. As you can see, the zipper runs the entire length of the side, probably about, I would say, in between 18 and 24 inches long. So instead of doing that, I decided to go the budget route, and I just took some zippers out of a pair of pants. The first zipper came from a pair of shorts that I was going to take to the thrift store myself, so those were free. This pair of jeans I got for 98 cents at the local thrift store, and so that brings our total up to $6.97. I decided to get the zipper out first so that way I would have the exact length I needed then for the shirt when I split the sides. So first I started by cutting the zipper out of the jeans themselves, and then I just moved on to more seam ripping. Again, this isn't difficult, it's just tedious, but I wanted to make sure I did it the right way so I would have the most amount of material to sew to the shirt after it was done. I didn't want to cut any of the nylon around the zipper. And again, even more seam ripping. Basically the way I did this one though is I just laid the zipper on the side seam here and just figured out exactly how far I needed to cut and just started cutting. You'll also notice that I did get in there with a lighter, like a cigarette lighter, just to burn off the ends of the thread so it wouldn't keep pulling out and split all the way up past where I had the zipper at. Originally, I was going to sew these on by hand, which you could totally do. It wouldn't be that difficult, just a little bit tedious, and I had already had enough tedium, so I cheated a little bit, took it over to my grandma's house and asked her to do it for me. So this is what it looks like with the zippers sewed on. I love the way it turned out. She even sewed in this little flap here to cover it up when the zipper is closed, so that's pretty cool. I also asked her to sew this little ring around the sleeve here so that I could fray the sleeves, because that's the final thing we need to do before it's completely done. And if we didn't do this step, the fray would continue back until the sleeve was completely gone. So this is the best way to do it so that the fray stays exactly how you want it to look, because you can sew it to be exactly where you wanted it. And I wanted about 1/2 inch back, so this worked out perfectly. And yeah, that's the whole custom. So for less than $7, we made this lookalike for a $450 Fear of God flannel. I think it turned out pretty good. I love the way it looks. It's super comfortable too. You know, all the tools that I used, you don't have to use all these tools. You could definitely do this entire thing with scissors and a needle and thread, just real basic stuff. So be sure to subscribe too, because I have one more video that I'm working on right now, and hopefully it won't take me a year to get this one out. So see you next time.